Welcome to the Mind Myself podcast. I'm Esther, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you information about healthcare approaches, health issues, and people's health journey stories, all from the complementary, holistic, and integrative perspectives, helping you become your own best health advocate and helping you make your own informed choices because you matter. Welcome to another podcast, Conversations with E. And it is again my great pleasure to welcome Jennifer Regular. Thank you, Jennifer, for being here.
Thank you so much, Esther. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So, in this podcast, we are going to be talking about living well, the new measure of success. And before we jump into that, can you tell us a little bit about your credentials and your journey to where you are today?
Sure. My credentials. Well, I guess we'll talk about my degree then, which is
sure. Let's talk about that first, and then let's get on to the really interesting stuff.
I got my BA in honors psychology back in the 90s, thinking I was going to be a clinical forensic psychologist and studying all the courses that related to that. And then realized after that it was really more about mental health that I was interested in, and then also spiritual wellness. So I studied those as I went on and evolved and became more interested in different things and modalities and so on, that I would work in the social services field for about 20 odd years. And then also started spending in the last 9 years of that getting into different healing modalities. So became a shamanic practitioner and a master integrated energy therapist. I would do group shamanic drum healing and offer different ways of supporting people in their healing process, healing and empowerment. And nowadays, I'm more interested in the empowerment aspect of everything, where people can take more responsibility for their self-care, their soul care, how they're living their lives, and aligning it with what's most meaningful and purposeful for them.
Wow. And when you work with a client, what does that look like in terms of the new measure of success? What does a session with a client look like for you?
Yeah, well, when we talk about a new measure of success, we're shifting out of the way of thinking of productivity and performance. Society and even ourselves tend to glorify this busy lifestyle. How are you? Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm crazy busy. Oh, I have so much on my plate. I don't have time for this. And, there's all this pressure and this busyness lifestyle that we've come to glorify. And then there's also the idea that we want high productivity. We're achieving more, and accomplishing. And so instead of looking at things from what we're achieving, what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, and how much we get done in a day, or, at the end of the day, we know I had a good day if it's been really productive, right? That's been our measure of success. But in our financial gains too, we hear so many people talking about these 6 and 7 figures, to bring your business to, and then looking at service and business as being a financial gain to be successful. So really what we're looking at is kind of moving away from all of that, from really shifting from that kind of mindset, and habit energy is really what it is, to creating some space and giving ourselves some room to breathe by releasing the pressure and talking more about our to-be list rather than our to-do list. And our to-be list, yes, shifts everything, just like you did now. You took a breath, moved back a little bit, and we slow down to realign. And that's what I see happening with my clients and with the people that I work with. When we start focusing on who we are at the core and what our values are so that we can start living that, then we radiate so much joy and peace and love and contentment, which are all the things that we usually want. Those are more soulful, spiritual kind of needs rather than, the accomplishments and the financial gains. And, those things are meaningful too, of course. And I am the first to admit I am an overachiever, and very type A personality, and like going all the time. I mean, people used to call me Genergizer. Now they call me the soul illuminator, because I've shifted what gets projected from me. right? Where I'm more internally focused now rather than externally. And the new measures of success become personal growth, how we're evolving, and also how content or happy or joyful we are. That's when you know you're living life well.
And what are some of the costs? I think you've alluded to some of them, but what are the costs to our souls, to our lives, to our minds, to our wellness when we're not doing this?
Oh, we become so much more reactive to life rather than embodying it. We just react to it. So we're doing damage control or tending to the next thing that shows up, and getting to the next thing on our to-do list. It's all reactive. And it's kind of just like pulls us all the time in the next direction. And that could be really detrimental to our physical health and also our mental health when we're not living in alignment with our values. When we're not drawing on our strengths, then we can feel defeated. We can become exhausted, overwhelmed, stressed, and when we're holding back our potential, when we're like constantly trying to meet the needs of others over meeting our own needs or even acknowledging or even understanding what they are, then that can create a lot of mental and cognitive blocks. Our spirit wanes, we can become very dispirited from how we become disillusioned about life, relationships we thought were going to be forever, or the job that we had always vied for, and lived for and wanted to get, and we get them and become very disillusioned because it's not turning out the way that we had expected. And so depression starts to set in, or the anxiety of having to do so much all the time because that's what we associate with success in life, and everybody else is like that too, and so we start losing our sense of what a successful life even looks like. And so that exhaustion, the numbness, the depression, the anxiety, the reacting to life, those are all costs of when we're not engaging in soul care.
Big costs.
Big costs.
And how do you balance? Because we still live in this society, and those of us who are working, and even if we're not, but many of the people watching this will be in a place of working in their lives, either on a sole purpose or a career path, or maybe that's a combination. But how do we balance the being and the doing? Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. The being first, because we still have to achieve some things. We still have to, I love your term, genergizer. So awesome. But how do you balance your energizer with spirit and taking a breath? And let's go a little bit further into that, please.
Yeah, well, it's all an experiment. It's all practice, right? That's why we call a lot of spiritual practices, mindfulness practices, and different ways of being as practices, because it's something that we're working towards. But here's the thing, like we're living in a duality when we talk about work and life. So the way to shift that is to talk about our life work, how we're giving service of ourselves, of our meaning and value through how we're being in the world and what we're doing. So rather than keep thinking of the doing and the being as separate, or work and life as separate, we're always going to have an imbalance because we see them as two separate things, right? So it's starting to come to a new understanding and cultivating a new kind of awareness, a new way of thinking, which is also practice of how we're living our lives and letting it become our life work, allowing our lives to become a living prayer or offering. What is our offering? And yes, what is our offering? So it's not so much, what we're needing to do, it's who we're being that comes through to what we do. So in a sense, it's not what we do, who we become. We are who we are, and how that gets expressed through our roles in the way that we work is going to change. So even if we're in a very mundane job, we can make that so meaningful and so purposeful by who we're being through that work. So I'll give you an example. This was a story that I heard Jack Canfield share, and he spoke about Johnny the Bagger. And Johnny literally bagged groceries. He was at the end of the aisle, and going in a grocery store, usually just want to get in and out of there, right? We have our list, we want to get the things, we want to pay and get out of there as quickly as possible, right? And so people don't like standing in lines. Only they did like standing in Johnny's line. And you know why? Because it caught on that with every bag, he was putting a written affirmation into their bag because he wanted to uplift people's day. He wanted to give them, that was his offering, to share something affirmative, something positive, to make a difference to their day. This simple affirmation put in the grocery bag, people started realizing what was happening and they wanted one too. So they would stand in line and they would wait in that aisle so that Johnny can bag their groceries and put in a little affirmation for them. That's what we all crave, is that affirmation, the feeling that everything's going to be okay, the little piece of hope, that little bit of meaning and purpose and that delight that comes from that. And so Johnny had a pretty mundane job. He was just bagging groceries, but look at the impact and the difference he made by what he was offering through that. So no matter what you're doing, no matter what role you're taking on, you can have meaning and purpose in that simply by being you, what you have to offer, how you want to be expressing your soul through your work. So that's your life work. It's not work and life, trying to find the balance. It's what is your life work, and how can that be expressed?
I love that. What are some other strategies? Let's get to some more practical things. Like we could find our own way to put affirmations in grocery bags, whatever that is in our own mind, whatever our, as myself, I love that all of this information is available to people of the world, especially women. It's just my heart. And so I want more and more people to come and experience that. So that's my little way. And every podcast is like a little affirmation. I know that you have those. What are some other things that people could do? Little tools, little snippets.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to consider when we're thinking of other tools and techniques and strategies, right? And it's really taking that holistic approach again. So looking at our mental health, looking at how we're setting up boundaries for ourselves, knowing what our limits are, knowing what's okay and not okay, being able to provide some structure for our day, which can mean, being in alignment with what you truly value, what your strengths are, what your passions are, and being able to live that. It's also about engaging in soul care and self-care. It's about your physical health, and what you're doing to support that, to support your body and your energy and your vitality. It's taking care of our stress, being able to manage that and knowing how much you can tolerate, what you need to recover, and what brings you back into balance or centered and into that calm state again. It's also about social well-being and our self-esteem and our relationships and how we're relating to the world even, right? So that cognitive, that mental health piece also comes in through that way. And also our work culture and our environment and how we set up the space that we're living and working in, all of that really impacts us. So it's taking that holistic approach to really look at everything and how it affects us and how it impacts us. And we have some say over what we put into our environment, what we consume, what we watch, what we engage our time, energy, presence, and attention with. So those are all things to consider. And in each of those, there's a tool and a strategy to support the best way to align with how you want to be feeling. So that's one thing that can be a takeaway. For example, is how do you want to feel? Because then that sets you up for creating the right conditions to support that. That'll create the conditions for what boundaries you have, how much time you'll be spending on something, how much of your whole being are you being present with in that activity or with that person, which can include yourself. Downtime for me is essential. The time of solitude, taking refuge, that's all really important for me. Others replenish their energy from being in community and having connections. Some people like to do a hobby or an activity. They like to have their creative side, or it's a new adult way of playing, So yeah, being able to explore those aspects of ourselves too to keep them alive as well. And that gives us a deeper sense of life satisfaction, of belonging, of connection, of meaning and purpose. So when we can think about how we want to feel, then that helps inform all the decisions that we need to make in regard to everything that we just mentioned, our time, energy, presence, and so on.
That's so key. And you've covered so many different areas. I want to pull out one, which is setting boundaries.
Okay.
How would you help somebody set a boundary for themselves, just for their own space? I know that that's something a lot of women in particular have had difficulty doing. They feel selfish when they set a boundary. And I know that you're not talking about being selfish at all. You're talking about self-care, soul care. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries, please.
Yes, boundaries. Okay. So first is how we think about boundaries. Okay. So we're not like locking ourselves into something. We're not creating some kind of wall or structure that's going to keep us in and other people out, because that can have its own negative impact, really. Instead, think of boundaries as it creating freedom for you, right? So freedom to do what's most meaningful for you and to be able to feel what you feel and to give yourself some room to breathe. So this supports you in knowing what you're going to say no to, but more importantly, what you say yes to, right? So it's not so much about learning to say no. It's about learning to say yes. Yes to yourself. Yes to doing the activities that you enjoy. Yes to spending time with your loved ones or with yourself or in the tub, right? However you want to be able to spend time, that decision is what creates your boundary. And once you start feeling that rhythm of the joy, the peace, the calmness that it brings you, then it really builds the momentum. Then you get to really catapult yourself into new ways of being and spending your time, right? So those boundaries really do create freedom. And boundaries are really a decision that you make about what you will allow and not allow into your life, what you'll say yes or no to. They're all really decisions that you're making.
Do you have any stories from clients you've worked with? I mean, of course, protecting confidentiality, but do you have a story you could share with us about someone who powerfully changed their life by saying yes and establishing their boundaries?
Yeah, I remember someone that was really affected by the energy of their partner. You know, when they were upset, they'd be upset. And the way that the partner was living their life really wasn't in alignment with the way that my client was wanting to live theirs. And yet she loved her partner, you know, and she wanted to make things work. And no matter what she tried to do and have control and have boundaries or create some structure, and tried really hard to make things work. And it wasn't working. It just wasn't working. We have no control over how other people think, feel, and do, but we do have control over what we choose to experience. And so learning to accept the things that we can't change, but then also having the courage to change the things we can. I mean, that's a big part of the serenity prayer, right? All about serenity and calmness and feeling that peace of mind. And so how we develop that serenity is accepting those things we cannot change, having the courage to change the things they can. So she started coming to me for integrated energy therapy sessions, and we would get the issues out of her tissues, you know, through the energy treatment. But then we'd also have these really interesting conversations. And as she started working more on herself and creating more self-awareness of what she needed and how to meet those needs and rebalance her energy, then she noticed as a natural byproduct, a natural consequence of doing that, that her relationship improved, that her partner noticed something different about her, you know, and was commenting on it and became more interested. And that's what I find when we start engaging in practices that are healing and empowering to us, we not only affect the people that are around us and come into balance with our own energy, but we actually heal the whole ancestral line, you know, so our families are even affected. And that's really important because we won't get so much into the energy work, but we restructure the DNA. We, you know, there's a lot of cellular memories that attract certain experiences and people into our life until we clear that and create a higher vibration to support and magnetize other things coming into our life. So when we're working on ourselves in some way, then that's what shifts, right? It's that energy, the attraction, the what changes the dynamics in our relationship, because the energy of that changes. And so it's like when you're running on empty, you can't get anywhere. You have to fill up your tank. And so is true for our bodies and for emotional, mental, and spiritual health as well.
I love how this is we're all holistic. It's a holistic, we are holistic beings.
Mm-hmm.
Our cells will contain memories, will contain energy. And how do we release that at all levels?
Mm-hmm.
So, Jennifer, as we're coming to the end of our delicious conversation again, what's something you'd like to leave our listener with today?
I like to challenge people and say, can you make the switch? Can you go from prioritizing productivity and performance into prioritizing your health and well-being? Because sometimes we think we have to work harder and try harder and, just really put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make things work and to perform and to be productive. And then we say that health and wellness is important and we do our best there too. But in life, in reality, we're still prioritizing productivity and performance. So what if engaging in health and wellness, like the client that I shared, when she prioritized doing that led to better productivity and performance, because then she became the person that she wanted to be. She was meeting her own needs. She was feeling well and whole and supported, and bringing that into her work, her home, and her relationships. So I'd like to see who's ready to take on that challenge. Can you prioritize health and well-being over productivity and performance? So even that little shift, because they're both high up there on our values and our, what we want for our lives. But just to move up health and wellness a little bit higher on the scale, I think are going to be our new measure of success and to live well.
Fantastic. Challenge accepted. I know it's something I'm working on all the time. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I love your wisdom. And for you watching, a session with Jennifer would be transformational, I know. Thank you again for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you for holding the space.
Thank you for being with us at the Mind Myself podcast today. We know that time is precious and you've spent some of your valuable time with us. We're grateful. If you would like to reach out to our guests directly, the information is below. And if you would like more from Mind Myself, that information is also below. Please visit our website and check out all the information about the different complementary, holistic, and integrative healthcare approaches, information about health issues, more podcasts, tons of blogs, and we even have a community page for you where you could reach out and tell your story safely, or you could ask questions and perhaps somebody else in the world is going through something similar to you. In any case, we're so glad you're with us, and we're doing this because you matter.